boy. Yo, what up? Just waiting for people to hop in and doing social media stuff while we wait for it. Oh wow, it is officially confirmed. The fuck? Oh, we got another offline follower. Shout out to Teach Money 6996. Good thing you put that 96 on the end there, or people would have thought it was sexual or something. Anyway, we got 49ers Cowboys, bro, coming up. And, sorry, we don't have 49ers Cowboys coming up. But just read this tweet from Aaron Miroff, who is by far one of the best follows you can get on Twitter if you are a football fan. The Nickelodeon game, 49ers Cowboys, was the most watched NFL football game in 7 years. 50 million plus people watched it. That's not including the people who watched it illegally on streams. Which, by the way, just another reason you should never feel bad if you pirate NFL games. So that you can watch multiple at one time. Because, if you want to watch out-of-market games, perfectly fine. I pay my money for cable to pay for all these sports networks to continue to exist, but, Damn, that sounds like it's lit as fuck. They just said, somebody just posted that they're making a group me for all the people who are going to be in LA for the Super Bowl. That group me is going to be dope as fuck. Also, definitely going to be a bunch of people trying to hit you up afterwards about like trying to collaborate and do stuff, 100% that's what's gonna happen with that. Especially if you're like a person who works for like fucking Fansided, well, I take that back. Somebody who works for Fanside who doesn't get paid as much doesn't mean you're not as talented of a writer. There's no question about that whatsoever. We got waiting room music. Did you guys like that? I'm probably gonna keep doing that. Let's see if we can loop a couple songs together. Especially since that's like the only time I really play music. I've contemplated like having segments have their own individual songs and stuff like that. Anyway, I should probably get up on tweet and stuff. Yeah, hold on. I forgot. Keelan's major keys. Major keys, bro. Ooh. Oh, man. Anyway. If you got something to say, you know where to put it. In the chat. Talking all football today. But as usual, I'm more than willing to talk about random shit on the show. I will say we're already doing a pretty good job on one of our goals for this season, for this year. We have our first interview of the year. That's probably gonna, it'll premiere when it gets posted. I interviewed somebody. Her name is Karen Garegian. Some of you who are in Boston are very familiar with her. She's basically a legend of the game. She's been covering full-time the New England Patriots for 15 years. She's been working at the Boston Herald, one of the most famous newspapers on the planet, for 34 years. She's been in the game for a while. She knows what she's doing. She top notch. She graced us with her presence and her knowledge as well. So that was clutch, bro. Straight up, big time clutch stuff. Came through, educated me a little bit about the Patriots. Had a conversation about it. Talked about some of the work that she's been putting out, which was nice. Anyway, we're live right now. Baby, on YouTube and on Twitch. As soon as I finish putting this stuff out, we'll get the show started. Talking everything from this weekend, NFL wise. Oh wow, okay. It's weird. NFL playoffs, NFL Twitter, NFL. Ooh, fuck. Oh, my bad. Let me pick a new song. Probably should have used the DJ feature to cycle through songs. This is one of my favorite songs that Christina's made. Oh, this isn't it. I'll let this one play though. But yeah, we got an interview that's dropping tomorrow, and then I'm interviewing my boy Joe George. I'm starting this new series. I guess I'll explain it when the show goes live too, but starting a new series where we discuss how do I phrase it? So we're doing like exit interviews like they do for media members for players on the team. We're doing those for every team in the NFL. So if your team's been eliminated from the playoffs or didn't make the playoffs, you're like first on the list, and hopefully by the time this is all over with, I'm a pretty low-level podcaster, so when I ask people to come on my show, they're like, yo, man, like, unless it's Rivers McCown, who, by the way, every time he comes on the show always goes way longer than I asked him to, but always drops, like, mad knowledge, bro, straight up when he's on here. Does an exit interview. Hopefully we can get him on here for a team. That would be dope. I want to see what he has to say about some random teams. Anyway, if you know somebody who's if you got like a reporter or a writer or something like that you would love to have on the show, I will definitely reach out to them, and I'll also report back exactly what they texted me. I'll report back what they texted me when I asked them to come on the show or DM'd me or whatever. I'm going to try and get some players mixed in, but yeah, basically the whole point is like to touch all 32 teams in the NFL and cross them off of the list in terms of like what did you think about their perception on this season, what they can improve on, what the goal for next season is, talk about the offseason, all that kind of stuff like that. And hopefully we'll be able to get some really in-depth conversation and also touch on some key stuff that happened. Oh man. Apparently, oh man, this seems like I'm looking at an article right now and it says Twitch star Ninja threatens Pokimane with legal action for alleged harassment. And a guy that I respect in the gaming industry, his name is Nate Bender. You should definitely follow him on Twitter, Nate Bender Rama. You just type Nate Bender and then put a AMA at the end of it. He said, it's a bad look for Ninja, but what should I expect from a dude that has a rule against streaming with women? I did not know that was a thing. Does he use his wife as an excuse? I realize we're only 19 days into the new year, but I've exhausted all possible ways I can pretend to be surprised about situations that arise. Ninja is really good at getting me to not care about him. I would say he has honestly done more damage to streaming than harm at this point. No. I think Ninja definitely ushered in a new way for a lot of people who, especially like for me in particular, I know there's a lot of people who were like me that didn't think the whole YouTube route was for them, but because of stuff like streaming, I can tell you right now, like in the sports game alone, like the value of streaming has definitely come from things that Ninja has done, proving that you can make money making a ton of money. Anytime you pave the way and you're like the forebearer and everything like that, like Ninja's made over $1 million doing streaming, like doing things that have spiraled off from his streams, right? Like he has sponsors that are on every single one of his episodes. He has been on ESPN multiple times, and he's had an E60 special done about him and how he got to the point where he is now. And of course, like a lot of people hate the fact that Ninja pretends that he's not, like he pretends that he doesn't do normal gamer shit, and people don't like that. Like he curses. He says like he curses at like kids and shit like that, and that happens every single day when you're online. And who's to say it's like right or wrong or whatever? I get it when you're an adult and you know that you're dealing with a child, you want to be the mature person in the situation, but people harass you, they push you to a certain level, and I'm not saying anybody ever earned it, you know what I mean? But for the most part, it's just something to think about, man. It really is. It's something like Ninja has paved the way for a lot of people in terms of their belief He has paved the way for a lot of people's belief in what they see streaming as. So, me being one of those people for sure. Anyway. Hold on. Sorry, we're almost done. You guys guessed it. I'm going to be late for the thing that I was going to go to. We are gaining followers, though, which is clutch, bro. Straight up. Back to earning followers and subscribers. Got to get some more on YouTube, though. Stuck at 13 subscribers on YouTube. Mainly because I do a bad job of marketing my show, which it's going to have to change. I used to go so hard on the marketing, man. Like, it's so exhausting trying to be all of the things for everything for one thing, and then on top of that, make the stuff that's actually interesting. And sometimes make the stuff that's not interesting. Like, I appreciate the fact that I don't try and purport myself as a person who has never been flawed in things that he said. For instance, I like to point out when I am wrong, because it's massively important. For instance, we're going to talk about a big moment where I was wrong today as soon as I fixed my fantasy basketball lineup. Which, by the way, take a moment now, open up your phone, fix your fantasy basketball lineup. Oh, the bots are in the chat already. What's up, bots? What's up, y'all? But yeah. Oh shit, I probably need to pick something for. Damn. Oh, I will be taking the Nets in that dub for the streak. Game blouses. Sorry, Temecula's Revenge is the name of my fantasy basketball team. I was looking at it real quick. By the way, fantasy basketball team doing horribly. Had a lot of injured players first half of the season, and they continue to be injured. I was missing Bam Adebayo for quite some time. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. So it was a little tough. It was pretty tough for me personally, but I'm over it. I've gotten better. Also, we had some. I forgot that I have a fantasy basketball team mixed in there a little bit. You know what I mean? If you're a person who plays in the game, you know what it is. You know what time it is, baby. But we're ahead by like a couple 100 points right now. So, and we got everybody playing tonight, and it doesn't look like the guy I'm playing has rotated any of his players. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we've posted on all the platforms. Anyway, oh wait, you know what? I'm gonna try something. I'm going to try one more thing, and it is going to be posting on Instagram. Even though, like, Instagram stories are so finicky about, like, who they reach and how they reach them in, but Instagram is the platform where I have the second largest following that I just don't post about when I go on to do, I never post about being online on here, so, yeah. Let me see how this goes. Ignore that face. Don't. One day I'll have to come up with a different face. Anyway, all right, let's do it, man. Let's do it. Let me open up Twitch real quick. We already did our sound check. Open up Twitch. Check out the live stream so I can see the chat. Hit up YouTube so we can see the chat. Get it popping off here in a second. All right. Ladies, gents, folks, sit back. It's about to be a wild ride. Going live in 3, 2. Ladies and gentlemen, Boys and girls and everybody else in between, I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. This is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. You're either watching on Twitch or you're watching on YouTube. Shout out to you. Make sure you give me a follow on Twitter. First of all, like and subscribe and smash that notification bell so you get an alert every single time that the show goes live. How was that? How was that my pretending to be a YouTuber voice? All right, cool. So, also don't forget to follow me on social media. Once again, every follow that I get gets me one step closer to my ultimate goal, the $100 million Spotify contract that I will use to purchase an island and never do this show ever again. So, help me get off the air forever. Please. Hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook, my personal Twitter account where I tweet about like my life, which maybe you don't actually care about. It's at the Ashton J, and you can also hit me up on Instagram at the Ashton Forever, which also just so happens to be my same name on TikTok. So use that as you will. I'm trying to get to over 1,000 followers so that I can go live on TikTok and basically do like a pre-show show to this thing. So if you want to throw a follow to your boy, go ahead and do that. It'll be pretty dope. We got I think this show's gonna be pretty quick. This is my opinion, mainly because we're only talking about like 4 games. So we're only talking about like 5 games. We do have a loftier idea to talk about, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But which by the way is right now. We have one thing to talk. I have to preview this. It's not up yet, but tomorrow or later on today, depending upon when the rendering finishes, I have done my first of apparently 32 interviews for the exit interview series that I'm doing, where I talk to a person that's either on an NFL team, within the NFL team, covers it in that market or something like that, to discuss how this season went, what they believe next season can be, and what the plan for the offseason is going to be, how the regular season expectations matched up with the actual regular season itself. My first guest was Karen Garegian of the Boston Herald, which, by the way, you want to talk about setting high expectations. Karen's been covering the Patriots for 15 years, working at the Boston Herald, one of the most famous newspapers on the planet, for 34 years. And she's also a woman in sports, so she has to be like, twice as good as like the average dude that's out there covering sports, right? She's been doing it for a long time. She's seen a lot, and we actually got a chance to talk about like her career a little bit, but we also had a chance to talk about the Patriots using the most money they've ever used in free agency, and whether or not she thought it was actually worth it when you see the finished product, talking about how the Patriots season may have been fairly/unfairly defined by how well they played against the Buffalo Bills. Who knows? We talk about that and some more. I'm uploading that a little bit later. The next one I'm going to talk to my boy Joe George, which if you've been on this show, if you've listened to the show before, you know that Joe George is he moved to Houston. He calls this place his home. He covers the Texans for Sports Radio 610 here in Houston. And on top of that, he is from Chicago, so he's a Bears fan at heart. He got a chance to witness the Cubs break their streak from something that has long been before he was ever born. And he got a chance to witness the Cubs win the World Series and all that kind of jazz like that. He's also a massive Bears fan, so he's real tapped in on that. So we'll talk to him a little bit. I'm going to talk to him tomorrow, which is... Well, I should probably tell you what today is. Today is Wednesday, January 19th. I'm talking to Joe tomorrow, and we'll see what time I upload it. We'll see. Because I doubt it'll be that long of a conversation. He has a child to take care of, and also today is his wedding anniversary. Don't know what the plans are or anything. Also, shout out to Trey Campbell, dude that I've worked with for a while at SB Nation and ESPN Radio. He's really popular here in Houston. He's also really popular in the NASCAR community. And like I always tell him, when he's rich and famous, make sure he doesn't forget about me. He just got a job at Sports Radio 610. He's going to actually be Joe George's producer. So shout out to him for being able to do that. Anyway, we dive into other stuff going on here in the grand wide world of sports. We need to, first of all, update you on what has been happening in the NFL playoffs, and I will do that by doing this. Boom. Here's the current playoff bracket for the NFL playoffs right now. You can see we got the Bills versus Chiefs, which is going to be absolutely wild when that game goes down again. And then that's a rematch, if you forget, from the AFC Championship game just a year ago. The Bengals are taking on the Titans, one of the stranger matchups that we see here. The San Francisco 49ers and Packers, who played each other earlier in the regular season, I might add. Same thing for the Buccaneers and Rams. If you remember, the Rams actually won that first time around based off of the way both of these teams played in the first round. We might have something cooking here. We'll see. We'll see how it all goes down because, quite frankly, the Buccaneers did not look like they needed Antonio Brown like they purported that they did at the midway point of the season, but that was more injury-based, not actually necessarily skill-based or whatever. But yeah, they also played a significantly less talented team than the Rams are bringing to the table, as they, out of all these teams that are on the table right now, the Rams may have the most talent-dense team overall. That's up for debate and discussion as well. But yeah, that is the official tournament bracket. And as you can see, we are currently coming up on divisional weekend. After that, it'll be championship weekend. And then it will be the gap in between Super Bowl weekend, championship weekend. Then the Super Bowl going down in SoFi Stadium. Hopefully there will be no lightning delays and all that good jazz, man. Yeah, we only got like a month of football left, and it's hard to believe, especially considering how long this football season has been. We're down to 3 more games. 3 more weekends of football actually being played. Are they actually playing the Pro Bowl this year? Who knows? / cares. All pro teams have been announced. I'm not going to sit here and read off a list of names of people and stuff like that for you to sit there and nitpick or whatever. Who cares? Most of you guys don't even actually understand the value of the Pro Bowl. Understand the value of the All Pro in comparison to the Pro Bowl. So what would it mean for? I guess I should be doing a better job of I should be leading the way in terms of pushing the value of the All-Pro selections over the Pro Bowl, because, there's just not a game where they show all the All-Pros playing against each other. There's only the Pro Bowl, which is, of course, by design, a popularity contest now to generate Twitter interactions and mentions amongst players and get people talking about the NFL. And it works every single year. As a matter of fact, many could say that it is one of the most consistent, massive drivers of conversation in the NFL that has very little to do, like a lot of conversations on Twitter do nowadays, with analytics and breaking down scheme. Everybody thinks they're, because they have access to all 22, they understand football at a super high level. Very few, all that jazz, whatever. We do need to ask a couple of key questions before we start breaking down these games. And once again, feel free to respond to these now, later, or like I've mentioned before, if you are from the distant future or from the future in general and you're watching this show, please, in the chat, drop something that is going to be super valuable that I can invest in or go and find and take possession of, whether it be a plot of land, a weapon, a map on the back of a mysterious piece of very important legislature, whatever it may be. But whatever. You let me know what it may be. But we need to talk about a couple of questions. I want to say it's 2 questions, but we'll see what happens. So this past weekend, we saw the NFL playoffs for Super Wildcard Weekend. It's round number 1 of the playoffs. A lot of people played a lot of football, and I'll click away from as you can tell, there were more games than usual because there were more playoff teams than usual, which goes hand in hand with the fact that the playoffs got expanded. The other thing we need to have a conversation about is whether or not we felt like that was a good idea, also in conjunction with Week 18. So, a lot of people did the obvious, grab the lowest fruit on the tree. And we're just obviously, the extra teams in the playoffs is a terrible idea based off of the results of those playoff games. So if you didn't know who the 7 seeds that got added into the playoffs were, don't worry. That's what I'm here for. The Philadelphia Eagles, who got their wings clipped pretty badly versus the Buccaneers. 31-15 was the final score in their game, and it was actually never close. The Chiefs played the Steelers, and the Steelers were the 7 seed out of the AFC. They got smoked 42-21, and you can see based off of those results why some people may not necessarily be a massive fan of having another team, especially a low seed, added into the playoff bracket or anything like that, because it doesn't seem like it'll actually make a difference, because when everything's on the table, the better teams are better than better teams are better than the teams that they are better than. And just because we didn't see an upset from one of these 7 seeds doesn't mean that we wholeheartedly should just give up on it. Because quite frankly, you want to talk about March Madness. March Madness has 16 seeds where HBCUs play up against like actual billion-dollar organizations, powerhouse programs every single year, and people for some reason, even you talk about University of Maryland, Baltimore County, a couple years ago beating out Virginia. People have been waiting on that one to happen for years, but the 15 seed beating the 2 seed, very common. The 3 beating the 12, or the 3 beating the 13 or 14 or whatever seed, common. Like, upsets are very common overall when it's all said and done. I get it, it's a big difference between college basketball and professional football, but we see that happen every single Sunday. Like how the Lions got their first win of the season. How the Lions beat the Cardinals, who at the time were considered to be one of the best teams in the NFL. The multitude of upsets. If everything went according to plan all the time in the NFL, we wouldn't care about the NFL. It wouldn't be this ridiculous powerhouse of a sport that we give a damn about. We wouldn't see endings like we saw with the 49ers and Cowboys. And I think 1 year, forgive me, 1 year is not a big enough sample size / piece of information to determine whether or not something is going to be that effective. But I will also point out, and be fair, the Steelers lost by 21, the Patriots lost by 30, the Cardinals lost by 23 on Monday Night Football during the opening weekend of the playoffs. It's the second instance in the NFL postseason history of 3 teams losing by a margin of 20 or more during the opening round since 1982. So this is actually one of the worst playoff weekends, and it is an outlier in comparison to other things. Because remember, I told you the 2 70s that got added in, right? It was the Eagles versus the Eagles and the Steelers that got added into the playoffs, which, to the credit of the Buccaneers, they could have scored one more point and they would have been on this list as well. But the fact of the matter is, there were 2 other teams that were considered to be high seeds. Like the Cardinals were a 4 seed. They won their division. The Patriots were a second. They were a wild card team as well. They were a wild card number 1 seed, right? And they are a part of this list of teams that got beat pretty badly in the opening weekend of the playoffs. So for us to sit here and say, the 7 seeds are the problem with what happened this past weekend, unlikely. Especially considering we're going to talk about one game that ended in kind of a stupid manner because once again, the phrase play stupid games, win stupid prizes came up big time in that 49ers Cowboys games. So yeah, we'll move on, and you tell me, did you think that the extra seeds were actually worth having in the playoffs? Because I know that there was a Raiders fan that I talked to, I think it was Reese Hufftaker on Twitter, and he was he's a Raiders fan, and he actually felt like he knew that he wanted the Raiders to make the playoffs. He knew they had a very slim chance of actually being able to beat the Bengals. He says that knowing that the game actually came down to literally the last drive of the game and one throw away from possibly being a tie ball game and going into overtime. And that was a legitimate thing that happened. So it's really hard to sit here and say that there's such a gigantic gap between a lot of these teams. I think there's something to be said about how the Steelers got into the playoffs. There's something to be said about how the Eagles got into the playoffs that may be representative of the quality of team that they've played. Because if you look at the Eagles' schedule, even though I find myself rooting for the Eagles to win constantly, and I've mentioned this before, it's because Jalen Hurts, I like him a lot. Jalen Reagor is from Texas as well. Jalen Hurts is from Houston, he's from Channelview, Texas, so of course I want him to succeed. Also, there's a lot of people out there that claim that they really support underdogs but don't support Jalen Hurts for some reason, and Jalen Hurts has proven time and time again he's got the chops to be able to go out there and throw it with the best of them. And the Eagles are in the midst of a rebuild, and Jalen Hurts has accelerated that rebuild by years because they've crossed needing to find a quarterback off the list. So at least a quarterback that's going to be able to help them win games during the rebuild. Anyway, moving on, hit me up in the chat. Tell me what you think. Were the extra seats even worth it to be added to the playoffs? And then, of course, you have to ask yourself, how much did the 18th game influence the teams that got into the playoffs? Because quite frankly, the Steelers were not going to be a playoff team until the final week of the season, where a couple of things went their way because of a Jaguars win versus the Colts, right? This bode poorly for the league overall, because I know we didn't talk about it on this episode, or I think this is during one of the random breaks that I had because of a tournament or something like that during the season. But there was something to be said about the fact that there's an article that came out, and the league is trying to expand to 40 teams at some point in the near future. Is this the kind of is this the kind of performance, if you are a person that's inclined to believe that the one time you've seen an extra playoff team or a 7 seed in the playoff, that's the definitive answer for whether or not that's a good idea, which is dumb when you say it out loud. But when you have that situation, like, does that mean that when the league tries to expand to 40 teams, does that mean that there's not going to be enough talented teams across the league because of the extra teams that need to fill roster spots? Or are we going to see more players who are at the back end of a lot of these current NFL teams rosters get an opportunity and go out there and prove that they truly are NFL caliber players, or NFL starting NFL superstar caliber players? And that's got to be a big question for people who are in the front office of the league, and just any person that's looking to invest in one of these future 8 straight up expansion teams, because talent has got to be a big question. Is there enough NFL caliber talent in the college ranks, the free minor league system that the NFL has cultivated, to get those guys into the NFL? Is there enough that they can keep in the NFL and prevent from going to the CFL? Are there enough high level athletes they can prevent from participating in other sports? And then the international expansion stuff, like in terms of like NFL Brazil, NFL Spain, NFL Africa, and stuff like that, the attempts to get more and more athletes from across the globe to invest and join in on the sport that is American football is a global effort in preemption of trying to find the next generation of NFL superstars, no matter where they come from. Like getting guys like Sammy Reyes, getting guys like Ola, who's been on this show multiple times, Ola Adiende, who plays for the Tennessee Titans, finding guys like him, who, by the way, Ola lived in America most of his life. He immigrated here and stuff like that, so he was already playing football. It's not like they went and found him in Nigeria and Africa and convinced him to play football, but trying to find people who have international backgrounds as opposed to depending upon the same hotbeds of football talent here in America, trying to find athletes to try and expand the number of people who want to join the league while the league is expanding, to give more opportunities, because every team represents 53 more spots in the NFL, and also those 8 markets are going to be in important areas, and they got to get out to a hot start, or they could fizzle out and die pretty quickly. Anyway, just something to think about. We talk about what's going on. We're going to actually talk about football to finish up the show here. We got a breakdown for every single one of these playoff games that are coming up here. Oh man, every single one of the playoff games that have already happened. Don't know why I said coming up, but let's take it from the top. We'll do it in chronological order. This is Saturday, January 15th. The Vegas Raiders took on the Cincinnati Bengals. And for the first time in 31 years, the Cincinnati Bengals can say that they won a playoff game. The last team that they beat in the playoffs does not exist anymore. We've already made this joke on this show, but shout out to the Houston Oilers, who are now the Tennessee Titans. They are the last team that the Bengals beat in the playoffs. Everybody's already made the text message jokes where they're like, oh man, the last time the Bengals won a playoff game, that text messaging didn't exist and people should be sending texts. I find that to be easily the corniest thing that I've ever heard as like a stat. But yeah, shout out to the Bengals fans, because when you've been losing that hard for that long, and I will say this, the Houston Texans did their fair share of kicking the Bengals in the nuts in the playoffs. They were like the designated playoff team they were like the designated playoff game for like 3 years straight in the NFL, the Bengals versus the Texans, because they were like one of the lower divisional seeds, and the Bengals were always a wild card team because the Steelers were like winning the division almost every single year. The Steelers or the Ravens were winning the division almost every single year, but the Bengals were good enough to be a double-digit win team, and they earned a wild card spot to play against the Texans, and then the Texans would beat them. So that happened a lot. But I will point out, this game, final score in this one, when it was all said and done, was pretty impressive, 26-19, because if you look at, it's a weird way to describe it, but if you look at the Bengals, it felt like the entire game that was going on, the Bengals just kept making big play after big play after big play after big play, and the Raiders were kind of like sputtering along, and for a long period of time, the Raiders were down big in this game, and they closed it towards the end as the Bengals were trying to figure out ways to kill clock and then get into the end zone late into the game to finish off this game. But they were the 5 seed, the Bengals were the 4 seed. The Raiders have to be immensely... This season was absolutely ridiculous for the Raiders. You can talk about all the things that happened off the field in terms of like one of their players, one of the players getting in one of their players, Henry Ruggs, murdering somebody in vehicle homicide, and then everything that's gone on after that. Talk about John Gruden and the racist emails and everything that goes with that. Now they fired not only, obviously they fired John Gruden, but also they fired Mike Mayock earlier today, which is a little bit shocking to me. A lot of people were talking about how terrible he's done at drafting, not only because of Henry Ruggs and Arnett or anything like that, but also because of Cleveland Farrell not panning out all that well, and his only good draft pick so far has been Josh Jacobs, who's been pretty consistently hurt when he's been playing for the Raiders, to their credit, but also just overall this season has been ridiculous for the Raiders. They've had a lot of times where they haven't looked like a playoff team, but they've had some moments where they've come up big. Derek Carr had the most comeback game-winning drives this season, and he almost pulled off another one, to be honest with you, if you watch this game closely. But despite the fact that the Bengals were nearly unstoppable, they scored on 7 of their 9 drives, and there was a lot of time in this game where Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and C.J. Uzomah looked like they were uncoverable. Like they could not be covered whatsoever. They were killing them all day, and to me, there was a lot of moments where Zach Taylor kind of flexed a little bit, like to start off the game. If you watched it, there were multiple plays set up in the first 15 plays that were just straight up empty formation, where there was no running back in the backfield. And when I see that, it's usually one of two things. It's one of the most confident things, or out of pure desperation. One of the most confident things in the sense that I say they have Zach Taylor calling an empty formation with Joe Burrow knowing and letting you know that, hey, guess what? It's a pass play, but it doesn't matter that you know it's a pass play. You're not going to be able to stop it. And then the other one is, of course, out of desperation, where you're just like, we need as many people out there who can catch the ball as possible as far down the field, so we're going to set up a full empty formation. But for the most part, when it came down to it, the Bengals looked really confident on offense, going up and down the field, and it seemed like they did it pretty consistently. They didn't even have to lean on the skills of Joe Mixon very much in this game, because they were able to find multiple times, finding a lot of wide receivers wide open. C.J. Uzomah was a really good check down option multiple times, but yeah, Jamar Chase was doing the Jamar Chase thing vast majority of this game. I will point out the T. Higgins Joe Burrow connection, obviously not as pinpoint as the Jamar Chase one, but nonetheless, T. Higgins always constantly open. It's just about whether or not Joe Burrow and he can be on the same page in terms of where the ball location needs to be for him to come up with catches. But yeah, it was clutch. It was an amazing performance. It seemed like a culmination of the entire season, kind of boiling to the top for the Bengals. And honestly, like the Titans should be very worried about what they just saw, because the Raiders secondary, not great, right? The Raiders secondary, we're not going to sit here and try and cap and say that they're like at the top of the top. They're probably one of the worst secondaries that was in the first round of the playoffs, and the Bengals took advantage of it consistently. But there was a lot of times where you're like, wow, man, they're getting these big chunk plays. They're getting like 10 yards here, 15 yards there, 25 yards there, all that kind of stuff like that. But for some reason, the Raiders are still in this game. Like I said, the final score is 26-19. As you can tell, the game got like really close towards the end. So, and to me, I thought that was weird, even when I watched the replay afterwards, because I was like, how did the Raiders messed up so many times in this game, including one key series that I feel like after the game was over, kind of defined the entire game. It was the second drive for the Raiders. They fumbled the ball. It was recovered and ran back to like the 15-yard line or something like that. The Bengals only got a field goal out of that because of the defense for the Raiders. Like I said before, not great, but they stood up and they forced a field goal for the Bengals. Then the ensuing kickoff to the Raiders was fielded at the 2-yard line by the Raiders kick returner, who I think was Jalen Richard, and he actually stepped out of bounds in the attempt to do that thing where like my foot's out of bounds when I catch the ball, and it is an illegal kick out of bounds. So, and he can attempt to field the ball forward or take the penalty. So it becomes like basically a free play in terms of somebody jumping off sides. It would be like he fielded the ball, he got possession of the ball while he was out of bounds, and that makes it a kick out of bounds because he was in contact with the ball while it was out of bounds, makes it a kick out of bounds, and then he's able to also run out the play until it stops. And if he gets some kind of crazy return or something like that, they decline the 40-yard the penalty to start their drive at the 40-yard line and just take whatever his return was. That turned into Jalen Richard caught it initially, and his foot wasn't out of bounds when he caught it, and so it turned into Jalen Richard caught it and then ran out of bounds at the 2-yard line, or stepped out of bounds at the 2-yard line. They start their drive from there. They have to punt after a three. The Raiders have to punt after a 3-and-out, and then the Bengals score another field goal after they punt on that 3-and-out. They essentially lost 2 drives on that. One, of course, was from the turnover, the fumble, and then the other one was from fighting field position, fighting the fact that they were at the 2-yard line and they couldn't really do too much against a Bengals defense that in the first half, their pass rush was dominating, and in the second half, their secondary, in particular, Jesse Bates, was all over the place, absolutely dominating in the secondary. Jesse Bates is the new Kevin Byard, if you get that reference. But yeah, Joe Burrow would become the first of 2 quarterbacks who played in their first playoff game this past weekend that would come out victorious. That, as you could tell, was not going to be very many quarterbacks, because I think it was like 6 in total that were playing in their first playoff game ever. But yeah, we move on. Final score in that one, Bengals 26, Raiders 19. It came down to a final drive for the Raiders, and they threw an interception. Derek Carr threw an interception after throwing like multiple dimes on this same game-tying drive. He threw an interception at a linebacker who was dropping back in the zone. He was looking for like a curl route from, I think, Brian Edwards or something like that, and he threw it right into the hands of a linebacker because of some pressure up front. Who would have thought? Sam Hubbard carried it big time when guys like I think they lost they lost Ojulari, who is one of their best run stoppers, along with DJ Reader, who, by the way, was dominating the line of scrimmage up front at the defensive tackle position. So shout out DJ Reader, former Houston Texan. I knew thee well. Moving on, Patriots took on the Bills. Final score was 47-17. This was the third. By the way, this is one of multiple third time playing this team in the season games. So like the rematch of the rematch. This is the third rubber match, as they would say, using a boxing term, right? By the way, just wanted to remind you, the Chargers almost ended up in one of these games, because if they had finished with the tie with the Raiders, the Raiders were going to be the team that got sent to play Kansas City. So it would have been a rematch with the Raiders for the Kansas City Chiefs, which may or may not have made a big difference. But the Chargers would have been in, and they would have played the Bengals, which would have been a rematch for them earlier in this season. But yeah, that's another thing too. With 18 games on the schedule, a lot of the playoff teams are going to have played each other beforehand, which will be interesting to see in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, we move on. We talk about the Bills 47 points to the Patriots 17. One thing I wanted to do, it's that thing where I just read off all the bad things that happened in this game, so or the wild stats that happened in this one. So we're just going to do that. The Bills had 27 points on the board before the Patriots scored their first one. Yeah, it got to 27-3 at one point, and Bills scored on 4 straight possessions. I think the only thing they missed was like a PAT. They got blocked. The Bills didn't punt in this game, which is the third time they've done that in 4 games, and they did it in 3 straight games, by the way, which is kind of wild. And then they only saw 7 third downs in this entire game, and they failed to convert one of them. One time. Josh Allen threw 5 touchdowns, and he seemed to be pretty much untouchable. There was a lot of times where Josh Allen seemed to be the ultimate form of a dual threat quarterback, including that one time he threw a ball that he thought was chunking out of bounds, and it turned into a touchdown. That's how you know you're on. When your throwaways turn into touchdowns, that may be a sign that you're in the zone. There's a lot of teams that were in the zone, like as a unit, because quite frankly, to pull off a dominant win like this, you can't do it without the effort that the defense had put into this one. They got multiple turnovers in this game. They got multiple sacks, and they did their thing from beginning to end overall on this one. So yeah, Patriots going out with a thud to finish off a season where they spent a lot of money in the offseason to buy a team that could be relatively competitive. And quite frankly, you have to wonder if they play any other team than the Bills in the playoffs, is the result different? Because in my heart of hearts, I feel like it is. Mainly because the Bills look like they're a team that can win the Super Bowl, but on top of that, a team that is way too familiar with the Patriots in the worst way possible. And remember, I'm sure every Bills fan is gonna point this out. The only time that the Patriots were able to beat the Bills is because of a freak weather incident that has not occurred again since. And they kind of did it. It was like -4 degrees or something like that in Buffalo when they played each other. So yeah. Sunday, January 16th, we move on to more of Wild Card Weekend. This is another one of the 7-seed games. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers played the Philadelphia Eagles. The final score is 31-15. And if you remember the Thursday night football game that these two teams played, this was basically that game. They shut them down on defense. There was literally a point where it was 31-0 in this game, and the Eagles didn't score until the fourth quarter of this game. They had 7 of their 13 drives they had in this one. So 7 of their 13 drives were 5 plays or less, which is not a great way to be able to score the ball consistently when you can't even maintain a drive that's longer than basically a 3-and-out or like 2 3-and-outs. So, there's that. That happened. That was a reality for the Eagles, and it was, quite frankly, this is like one of the worst games the Eagles have played all season, hands down. And they looked really bad at the beginning of the year. Essentially, everything that could have gone right for the Eagles was capped off by like a turnover. There were multiple times where, there's that photo of Mike Edwards coming over from like the middle of the end zone to intercept Jalen Hurts, throwing the ball to Devontae Smith on what would have been their first touchdown of the game. So, anything that was going well, the Buccaneers took away. And also the big thing coming out of this, Bruce Arians got fined for slapping his safety in the back of the head, like on the field for some reason, like inexplicably. And then the safety was Adrian Adams, I believe his name, and he like kind of shoved him off and walked away. And a lot of people were like, well, if he had turned around and done the same thing to Bruce Arians, people would be losing their mind. Instead, Bruce Arians does that to a player on the field, and everybody's defending Bruce Arians, which is weird. What kind of weirdo is out here defending a grown man hitting another grown man and thinking that that's okay? You know what I mean? Somebody who's supposed to be on the same side as you. Like, it would be like me going up to my friend, and when I'm upset with them, like, literally punching them in the face or, like, hitting them in the side of the head and expecting them to not fight me back, right? And expecting people to support. Well, Bruce Arians doesn't expect you to support him. I think he recognizes what he did was an asshole thing to do. But that's kind of indicative of the culture of football, right? Like, that's indicative of a toxic work environment. Like, your boss shouldn't be able to come over and hit you in the back of the head, and people defend your boss and try and call people soft for calling you out for doing something that is wrong, literally in all facets of life. It's not even like, oh, that would be so messed up if he did it, like, in the real world. It's messed up that he did it at all, like, even on the football field. And it's really weird that some of you have grown up in an environment where coaches have done that to you on the field, and you think that's okay. Like, you think it makes you tougher because you can take abuse from other people, and that's not how the world should be. Like, if you're just like, well, there are going to be people who do the wrong thing all the time, and you can't be a person that shuts down when somebody does you wrong one time. And then, like, in reality, it should be like, we should be striving towards a world where you don't have to be the quote-unquote tough guy when somebody does something mean to you. We should be striving towards a world where you don't need tough guys anymore. Anyway. There's my soapbox for today. But yeah, he got fined like $50,000 for that. So, which is weird that it only cost him money for hitting a player. And honestly, like, what could he be so mad about that he needed to hit Adrian Adams on the back of the head? Moving on. I don't want to talk about sad games. I was personally sad that the Eagles got completely shellacked because if you recall, on this show, I predicted that the Eagles were going to win. I thought they were going to be the upset team. Other than that, I think we were pretty spot on all our predictions except the Cowboys game, which, shout out to the Cowboys for letting me and all their fans down for the 20th straight year. Shout out to them. 49ers 23, Cowboys 17. The best unit in this game, hands down, was the 49ers defense. There was no question about that whatsoever. Not only did they do a spectacular job in terms of defending the pass, but on top of that, they did a freaking amazing job defending the run. They held Zeke and Tony Pollard and Dak Prescott under 100 yards combined together. So the total yardage for the Cowboys in this game was like 77 yards, and that's like the fourth lowest they've been held to this season. The other three teams that held them that low were like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Eagles, because they're familiar with them and all that kind of jazz like that. But the D-line for the 49ers was on point. Shout out DJ Jones, their defensive tackle, and then, of course, all the linebackers making the plays. Alshire
Alshire, and then, of course, Fred Warner, just beasting, absolutely beasting the entirety of this game. There were multiple times where the offensive line either didn't get any push up the field, or as soon as they tried to run to the outside of the tackles, the D linemen sealed off and were able to set up the linebackers to go and tackle running backs and not be touched at all by a single linebacker. Insane. And any play that went well, almost every single really high-quality running play, there was a penalty called on it for holding, which, by the way, 14 penalties in this game for the Cowboys. Combine that with the fact that the 49ers D-line was on. Combine that with the fact that the 49ers offense, for the first half of the game at least, was clicking. Absolutely clicking. They got up 10-0 off 2 possessions, and then they were able to work their way to 23 points in total in this game. Even despite the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo missed maybe 2 other touchdowns. One was to Brandon Ayuk and one was to Juwan Jennings, I think, in the course of this game. But yeah, there was definitely one to Brandon Ayuk that he missed. That was a big play that could have been made. But for the most part, even with Jimmy Garoppolo missing on throws because of I'm assuming he would say because of his messed up thumb that he says hurts quite a bit. And on top of that, like, you can't really do like the whole numbing agent thing because it messes up your ability to throw the ball. But yeah, there's that combined with the great defense the 49ers played. The Cowboys still kept this game like relatively close because of the second half. Their last drive before halftime, they killed it. And in the second half of the game, they did a spectacular job offensively up front. And I think that played a big role in terms of their being able to find some success in the second half of this game. As you can see, they only scored 17 points, which would be one of their lowest performances of the entire season. Nonetheless, they were able to get it to the point where they were able to run a quarterback draw with 14 seconds left, and their ability to win the game depended upon an umpire to run as quickly as possible in the fourth quarter after he'd been running the entirety of the game to touch the ball to give them one more throw towards the end zone from like the 15-yard line of the 49ers. The chances of them being able to complete that, lower than the chances of the 49ers being able to defend it, right? Like, that's a real thing. So for the people who are talking about the refs totally screwing them over because they helped out the 49ers and the Cowboys and all this kind of jazz like that, I'm not really interested in hearing that because vast majority of the penalties they called against the Cowboys, there was really blatant evidence that it actually happened. And if your argument is maybe the 49ers got away with some stuff, and maybe or maybe not that could be true in this situation overall, but it definitely doesn't come off that way. Like, there's a lot of evidence that shows that the Cowboys committed every single one of their penalties, and there were also mistakes made. For instance, the multiple turnovers before they started to really heat up in the back half of the game, the multiple turnovers that led to the 49ers getting extra positions and then being able to kill the clock because Elijah Mitchell basically dominated the clock. They had 8 more minutes in total game time than the Cowboys did with the ball. That's almost 10 minutes off the clock that belonged to the 49ers because Elijah Mitchell was not only running really well, but he was running consistently and he was getting big yards. It's really hard to sit here and say the Cowboys got screwed by the refs when there was a lot of other opportunities they had to go out there and stop things from happening. They had a lot of opportunities to stop the bad things, and they couldn't. They even got a low-scoring game out of the 49ers. Like, 23 points is not a lot, and they couldn't come up with another touchdown. Like, it's just one of those situations where the fans are going to be the fans, and you can't listen to what they have to say, because if you do, the NFL's rigged because their team didn't win. They're like, oh, our team played really well all season. They really didn't, but, whatever. The Cowboys had everything that could go wrong. They had situations where Tyron Smith was struggling to get pass blocking cleanly because the 49ers had gotten them into a position where they could only throw the ball. Like, the running game got almost completely abandoned by Kellen Moore and the coaching staff for the Cowboys overall, which is interesting. Also, starting to see people turn a little bit on Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator, which is interesting for the past couple years because he's been doing the whole, abandon the run thing in the second half as soon as things get tough for quite some time. And now all of a sudden in a playoff game when it happens, people are shocked and amazed. Although I'm not going to sit here and lie, he's clearly tried to go out there and maximize a lot of the talent, but I've been skeptical ever since I started to see him consistently keep Amari Cooper out on third downs. I found that a little weird a couple years ago, whatever. The Steelers played the Kansas. Well, no, let's be for real. The Chiefs played the Steelers like a fiddle. 42-21 was the final score in this one. Actually really shocking that the Steelers even scored in this game with the way that the Chiefs were playing. If you didn't catch how this all went down, basically every time the Chiefs had the ball, very much like the Bills, they scored. And if you couldn't keep up with that pace, which in case you haven't been watching the Steelers all season, they have the offensive pace of a glacier, like a glacier before global warming. Like one of those Ice Age type glaciers. That's their offensive pace. So it was actually shockingly amazing that they scored 21 points in this one. And I get it, one of them was like a garbage time touchdown because they were down big the entirety of this game. And honestly, me personally, for a person who does not care for Big Ben all that much as a human being because of that thing, and because he also seems like he may or may not be not a great teammate. Well, I guess time will tell. Haven't heard anybody talk about him being a bad teammate. Seems like everybody was real. Everybody really liked him, and everybody was like, oh, man, thanks for all the good times when he left and all that kind of stuff like that. But there's things that Big Ben has done that don't seem like things that a good teammate would do. But also, I've never been the caliber of athlete that Big Ben has been, right? But the sexual assault thing is still something that I believe happened. But this is actually a lot funnier than him losing the season finale to the Ravens. This was so much funnier because the Chiefs were flying all over the place, and there was nothing Big Ben can do about it. He looked terrible, and this is the kind of loss where it was, without question, at halftime, this game was over because the Chiefs had kicked it into old school Chief mode. And when I say old school, I mean the last 2-3 years of Chiefs football, and look like a Super Bowl contender, like many teams look like this year, this past weekend, including the team that we're about to talk about next. The Rams 34, the Cardinals 11. This game was over pretty quick. These were two sketchy teams entering a third time that they played each other this season, because remember, the Rams and the Cardinals are in the same division, and they had to play each other basically for the division title, and the Rams came out on top in that one. They finished up with the 4 seed. The Cardinals got the 5 seed. And this was Matthew Stafford doing Matthew Stafford things. And I said on this show, I remember talking about how I think the Rams, without a doubt, are going to be the more consistent team out of these two. Because I've seen their defensive presence look pretty consistent throughout the course of the year, and on top of that, even when their defensive presence is bad, they show up big time. But they were able to generate mad pressure throughout the course of this game, and on top of that, they have the secondary that can keep up with the wide receivers that are not DeAndre Hopkins for the Cardinals, and it showed in this one. And of course, they've now seen them for a third time, so they've gained a ton of information about what they do and their tendencies, how to beat them, what routes they run more often than the other ones. And of course, now everybody's talking about Cliff Kingsbury getting fired, which is interesting considering a lot of you said that he shouldn't have even been a head coach to begin with, and now he's taken a team that was in the dumpster, basically with Josh Rosen at the starting quarterback, gotten Kyler Murray, took them to the playoffs within the span of 2 years. Many would say that that's improvement. But nonetheless, the Rams kicked their ass in this one. 34-11 was the final score. It didn't feel like it was ever going to be close in this one. Aaron Donald, Michael Floyd did they killed it out there up front. Von Miller got a sack on Kyler Murray, who couldn't find a clean pocket to save his life throughout the course of this game. And the run game was non-existent for the Cardinals. It showed a ton of times. By the way, freakiest thing about this one was seeing Cam Akers go out there after tearing his Achilles this season, come back, and then continue to dominate as if he had been playing all year, which is terrifying of a concept. How freak of an athlete do you have to be able to pull off something like that? Legitimately, you have to be something beyond a human, right? Genetically, you're at a higher plane than the rest of us. There's no way that you should have an Achilles tear that heals within the span of a single football season, let alone less than a year. Insane to think about, but here we are, ladies and gents. The Rams move on to the next round of the playoffs, and we will move on to the next episode of the Broke Boy Sports Podcast, because we are out of here. That was our final game to break down in this one. If you got anything else you want to talk about on the show, keep the conversation going offline at FB_playbook at the Ashton J. You can, of course, follow, subscribe on Twitch at Broke Boy Sports and on Facebook at Broke Boy Sports as well. Shout out to everybody who watches the show consistently, and don't worry, that interview will be up within, I'm going to start the upload right now. It's only a 20-minute interview, so it should be up pretty quickly here. We can only hope. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, wash your hands, wash your ass, most importantly, stay inside and go home, Roger.